Recently we were asked for some guidance on how to chart the action of dropping a stitch or dropping a yarn over, and we do have some symbols in Stitch Mastery that you could use to chart this. You won't find them in the normal palette, but it's possible to create a custom stitch to chart that specific action. So at the moment, as you can see, we've got a chart with a couple of yarn overs added in round 2. I will link in the description below to a video that gives more details and a much slower introduction to customising stitches and setting up your own user stitch library. So if this is something you haven't done before, I would suggest watching those videos first. But I'm going to come to Tools and then Preferences. I have the Stitch Libraries tab open and I'll open the User Libraries version 3, select my own user library and Edit or View. And I'm going to create a new stitch. So first of all, the questions are about how many stitches this will consume and produce. So we're going to consume the yarn over, or the stitch that you want to drop, because that stitch is already there in your chart. But afterwards, once you've dropped the stitch, you will not have that stitch on the needle, obviously, so we'll change the produces to 0. Spans 1 cell is perfect, and let's call this drop yarn over and abbreviation drop YO, and our mirror and wrong side will be exactly the same. There's not an opposite way you can work this. And let's come to Edit Appearance, and we have the Stitch Mastery dot menu open. And as you can see, we have a couple of different arrows. So we have one here in the top row, and depending on how wide your screen is, this other arrow on my screen, it's 4 rows below. On yours, it may be slightly higher up, but there are 2 downwards facing arrows that you could use, which seem like the logical approach for dropping a stitch. Click and drag to select the whole area of the cell, and then click on the stitch we want to add and click OK. It's going to go in the custom stitches drawer and add to the end of drawer. We'll add it to the top of the drawer. That's fine, so click OK. And as you'll see, the stitch now appears in our table view in the custom stitches drawer. Now of course you'll want to add in a description that explains exactly what you mean, or if there's anything specific you mean about dropping the stitch, but the stitch is there for you. So click OK and apply and close. Now we need to tell Stitch Mastery that this is the stitch library we want to use for this chart. So I've come to Diagram, Edit Diagram, Properties, Stitch Library and Text Templates, and we'll choose my version 3 user library. We'll also refresh the text and key, although nothing should change at this point, because I haven't changed any of the stitches that are currently in my chart. We'll come down to the custom stitches drawer in the palette, and I can select my drop yarn over and pop that into the chart. Above the yarn over stitches, so in our output text we have round 2, knit 5, yarn over, and then round 3 we've got knit 5 and drop the yarn over, knit 4, and so on. Now of course this means that we have an error in our stitch count, because we've come from having 14 stitches in the first round, adding 2 yarn overs in the second round, so 16 stitches. In our round 3, because these have no value, our stitch count goes back down to 14 stitches, because at the end of the row there's nothing here, so we've only got 5 and the 4 and the 5. Which is all fine up to round 3, but then of course round 4 we've currently got 16 stitches. Now depending on your chart and what else is going on in it, there may be different ways that you'll approach correcting this. You may have other increases and decreases going on, but one simple way, if you only wanted to chart this specific bit, you can pop in the grey no stitches, which reduce your stitch count back to 14, so your chart is now correct. You've gone from, you had a slight increase by adding the yarn over, then you've dropped the yarn over, so you've come back to the same 14 stitches as you started with.